But it would be better to be in back.
I always
prefer to be in the back.
I always sit at the back. Always. I never sit down the front. Never.
I often have had to sit on the side because they didn't want to block
On
the
the
sightlines, or if there are
side.
too many dancers
Yes,
blocking
side,
you, so I sit
yeah.
on the side, but look at it as if I'm from the back.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yes. So,
It's hard to reverse the images. I find it
Yes.
very.
I think that more of the dancers these days do it automatically because they're used to copying a video.
Yeah.
You know, they're constantly watching a video and then doing the movement in the video. So they're more used to it than I am.
converting right and left.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah,
might add,
you know,
might add they're
looking
learning
at-
from the video incorrectly. So, no, this is very interesting because you state, you teach something and they learn it, but they never go back to the video to see if they're doing it correctly. Very, very seldom. And if they did, they'd find out that there were things that they were doing that's not there, there were things missing, or et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And this is especially even after you leave, they never go back and check again. And we know from experience that as soon as the choreographer leaves, it starts to change.
Yeah.
Do you,
Also, you find that as you're looking at the video, you see the inconsistencies. Like, one of these people's making a mistake.
Yeah.
I don't know which
It
one.
sticks out. It sticks out.
I found out that what some people do is have the video
Yeah.
shooting into the mirror,
Yeah.
and so the dancers will learn what they see in the mirror,
Yeah.
and then they've got right and left
Yeah.
sorted out.
Yeah, you see that.
So,
Yeah.
but,
interesting.
so I always put in timing later on, bar lines, numbers 1, 2, and 3, or whatever.
The other thing I do, which helps me a lot, if I have the little facing pins along the side, I put little arrows to show where they're going from the pin.
To show what?
Where the dancer is going from the pin. You have the pin on the side, so you put little arrow, they're going on the diagonal, they're doing a circle, left or right, or backwards or whatever. So you
I'm sorry, what do you mean
Without-
by the pin on the side?
stage facing pin.
Oh, the facing,
Stage
the
facing.
front side.
Thank you. You know what I
It's
like.
a better term, front
is.
side.
Front side, okay. Yeah, I put at the front sides there, I put little arrows on where they're going from that.
Where they're going
face.
from.
Yeah.
From
That's a good idea.
It
It's
is.
like you're making a
A
little
floor
plan
without
with
needing
that,
to
like
draw
little mini
and
floor plan.
get exactly.
Exactly, yeah.
little more
That's
mini
right.
floor plan.
Yeah.
And that helps a lot, believe me.
Yeah.
Especially if there's going to be a little bit of a turn in the notation showing that they're changing direction
Yeah.
right from that point.
I think it's interesting as you're talking, and I don't mean to cut you off. I don't want to cut you off if you have any more to say. But I find it interesting because I also, feel that's what you're saying. I agree with. The only thing I would add is that it depends on what they're focused on in the rehearsal.
Yeah.
So if they're focused on a hand movement, then you grab what you can. You grab that.
Exactly.
And, it isn't always just the supports, but if you're doing the whole, then you start with the supports. But if they focused on, we want the hands to go like this, then you.
But there's
Right.
also
You're
a
doing-
problem, excuse me,
Stop.
there's also a problem when they try to get them to do something and they teach, you give different images, different approaches, all the rest of it. And you're writing it all down, when you finish you can't see the movement
No.
because you have too much information in there. I've seen that many times.
Interesting.
Yeah. So you've got to choose what to write down because the more symbols you can take off the page, the better. Truly.
You mean leave off the page.
Yes.
Is that
Yes.
what you mean?
Yes.
When you say take off
The more symbols you can take off the page
Or never put on.
or never put on, the easier it is to read.
the page? Of course,
Yeah.
of course. But then the less detail you have specified.
Yes, Nate was asking a question.
Yeah, but
Okay, sorry, Ray, are you finished? You're done? I have a question. So, like in the fast pace of rehearsals, what if the choreographer move quite fast and then you're not able to catch that phrase or whatever things they're teaching that day, and then they doesn't go back to visit for a while, then what, as a notator, what would you do to kind of try to notate that part?
Just leave it.
If
Yeah.
it's too fast and you can't get it down,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
what do?
Mm-hmm.
You get it the next rehearsal.
Next rehearsal.
Yeah, the next time they do it.
You
But-
get something down.
You may have a blank page, or you may have just one symbol, and you flip the page and you keep going.
And also, I think these days choreographers are more open to being questioned
Questioned,
about it.
asked.
In the past, they didn't particularly like that.
The other thing,
You're a nuisance in the room, but
Right.
today you're welcome to the room.
The
Very,
other-
very,
yes. The other thing that's different these days is, like, when I remember when we were notating at, Ballet Theatre and Joffrey, the union, you were not allowed to videotape.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
you had to memorize or
Oh, that's-
get it on your
oh.
paper or ask some dancers. Can
Yeah.
you just go over those steps with me again after
I'll
class?
give you a perfect example. When I was notating Paul Taylor's Black Tuesday with ABT, I asked them, do you mind if I videotape? They said, no, videotape all you want to.
Wow,
Yeah,
so different from in the past.
very, very different.
And people are so used to being videotaped.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
Do you, so when you were notating most recently, and you're notating recently, do you actually get up and videotape stuff for a backup, just in
Absolutely,
case?
absolutely.
Do you do that, Ann? Do you rely on videotape at all, or?
I don't notate anymore at the moment, and I don't videotape.
Would you
I'm just not
encourage, if, knowing that that's there and you were teaching people or you're trying, would you feel okay with having that be a tool as a
Of
notator?
course, of course. And I remember how impressed I was when Ray told me years ago that in rehearsal you would have your tape recorder on,
Yes.
so that as the music played,
Yes.
you would say
Yes.
arabesque or
Yes.
spring or jump.
Yes.
And the interesting
And
one
then
about
mark
that
the
is
music
so to
when we're
score.
doing
get the
undertone.
key moments.
Yes. When we're doing undertone, I don't think it ever got finished, I'm not sure. I didn't finish it anyway. But we know that the way Tudor teaches, he says then down, down, up, down, down, up, down, down, up. And I would take that, and the next day it was on different music.
That's not
It
fair.
was what?
Because
And
live
music was
pianist,
different. When he said down was at a different note from when he said it the day before.
oh, so there's an inconsistency from
Well, maybe
the
he did
stager.
it purposely, because
No,
Tudor was
no,
pretty
no.
smart when it came.
Oh,
Yeah.
yes. He
But
was.
You mean he would do
I
it?
notated one of Joffrey's works, and it wasn't Bob Joffrey teaching it, but one of his assistants. And I remember saying as I'm notating it, the music doesn't seem right. And then another score got produced later because the music was just off. It was just, it didn't seem to, the phrases didn't seem to be right to me, but I notated what was being taught, because that's,
Was it the correct music?
the music was correct, but how they phrased it in relation to the music changed
Yeah.
when it was next taught.
Absolutely. Can I bring something else up while we're on this subject?
Sure, but just before we do you, before we go and evolve into it, do you two have any thoughts about what we've been talking about? at
Well,
this
it's
point?
been interesting to hear because it's confirmed what I've been doing. Not that I notate at all anymore, I haven't for quite a few years, but the method that I used was to first have the center line,
Okay.
sketch in the sports, but if there was some particular kind of arm movement that was a little different, I would put that out to the side. I used numbers for counts. I didn't try making the little ticks on the staff because it would always get too confused because the
Yeah.
movement would suddenly be very short or very long. So it's the same. But I appreciated hearing, gee, that's what I used to do.
I wonder if that's because we were taught that way,
That's what I
that we
was
came
wondering.
from Anne to Mickey to us
Right.
to, you know,
If it had to do with the way
or
we were
or if
taught.
it's because
Something
it
in-
makes such logical sense,
It's
which
inherent.
is it's
Well, it makes
inherent.
logical
But
sense.
you know, Anne is very logical, so it may just be that.
No, it's logical after it's done. And you look back on it and start to teach it, then you see the logic. You don't always
You
see
don't
the
always
logic
see it
when
going
you're
in.
learning or when you're doing this after the fact. Something's got to be written down first before you can see the logic. But my other question was,
Well, let's, just one minute. May? You don't have, okay,
How
go
about
ahead.
you, Charlotte, also as a notator?
I can't honestly remember what I did as a lava notator. It was so many years ago, and my way of thinking is so different now because, without going into it, but it's obvious that when you're going to notate something using motif notation, it's, I think, a very different process. It's a whole different
Yes, it
ball
is.
game, and we don't, you know, because most of us right now are focusing on lava notation, but so I can't really speak to it. I have thoughts, you know.
But I think as Ray was indicating, when you teach writing, if you're teaching a brand new person who's not experienced with any writing, it may be a different.
Well, that's something we
That's
really,
something else.
we
It's
should
not
maybe
the same
think
as.
about.
well, that was my next thing, is that
Right.
there's a difference between writing as a notator and teaching writing.
Mhm,
Yes.
okay.
When you teach writing, how do you do that? And for example, I have this whole problem of what's taught in the elementary, intermediate, and advanced. And just to make one statement, I think the advanced has too much material in it. It should be taken out and taught or used taught during notator training, not during the advanced class, because there's too much and too little time. So the question is, if you're going to teach writing, all the stuff that we're talking about, you just introduce it as it comes up, or do you make it a special point that you're going to teach? And one of the things I do when I teach writing, they don't, first of all, they haven't got a clue how to write it down on a piece of paper. They don't.
Where even to
How
start.
to even start. And when I did the dictation for the advanced class, I did the dictation and then I broke it down. First, write down the symbol for the table. Now write down the symbol for the dancer. Now,
The symbol for the, what was the first?
It's for props.
prop,
We had a table.
So you write down the symbol for that. Then you write down where the dancer is. Now you write where the dancer's arm is. Now you write that they're supporting a cup. And you lead them through step by step what they're supposed to be putting down because they don't know how. They just don't.
Now, these people have already learnt some lava notation.
Oh, yeah, they're in the
Right,
advanced
elementary,
class.
intermediate, and now they're in advanced
Class.
class that Ray was
I was
teaching.
doing a dictation of props.
But what, go ahead.
I
yeah.
just wanted to mention, when I was at the Boston Conservatory at one point a few years ago, I can't remember the name of the lady who was notator for the Boston Ballet, and she was teaching lava notation at the conservatory. And she would teach them, they'd have their graph paper and their ruler,
Oh.
and the
Oh,
forward
dear.
symbol had to
Yeah.
be so many,
Squares.
and
Oh, graph
I
paper.
said,
Oh, my
Good
God.
grief.
really? I said, well, I just start with the center
Yeah.
line,
Mhm.
and then the supports and so on, and then later you put in the timing. And she said, like notator training. And I said, yes, because the beginners, they need to just put down a sequence of events,
Mhm.
whatever they can capture, and to spend time. And this was Knust. Knust, when he notated, he'd have the dancer there showing the starting position on the floor maybe. And so he would take his ruler and he'd write down
Oh.
this starting position.
See, he was never
And then he
notating
said-
with the professional company learning fast.
He had none of that
Yeah.
professional application. And this, trying to get a beautiful score right away, I mean, rubbish, isn't it?
Doesn't work.
It's
The
constipated.
other thing I wanted to bring up in this whole teaching writing and teaching reading is that one of the things we haven't done so much of, and I think we need to do more of it, is look at how reading and writing are taught when language is taught, the language skills. So when you look at children in first grade and as they're learning, they start by reading. They read, and they're pushed to read beyond, things are filled in that are beyond their intellectual understanding, but that's how vocabulary gets introduced to them. They read, and then they write. And when they write, there have been a lot of experiments lately on how children are taught writing. And I'm not sure that they've come to conclusions, but it's always one step behind the reading. You read at a much higher level than you write. And although you have to keep doing it and keep reinforcing it, it's like, and I think what we've been doing is trying to have them at exactly the same level, and people get frustrated, especially in writing classes. I've seen a lot of professional dancers, just say, I don't like notation. But if you put them to read, they love it because they feel it in their bodies, they get the sense, and I think they would be great writers too if they were just taught a little
That's like
differently.
adults learning a foreign language. I mean, speak it, and then maybe you can write it later.
I
Yeah.
always
Same
taught the
thing.
reading first and emphasized the reading all the time. There was not a lot of emphasis placed on writing, certainly not the first couple of weeks of the course.
Yeah.
Because I had dance majors and they wanted to
Yeah.
dance. So the important thing to them was being able to get up, and they could do ballet variations in like 3 classes or 2 classes. They could be up there actually dancing. So we hardly did any writing at the beginning, and that was always de-emphasized because not too many people become notators, but you really want them to read
Yeah.
because the restaging and the reading is something they can access right away.
Yes.
And I
And
used
it's very valuable to them.
it is. It has a value. We used to take a ballet variation at the beginning of the semester, and depending on how many students I had, I'd give them each 8 bars. And if there were so many students, that I'd assign maybe 2 to each 8 bars. And they would each learn their 8 bars, and then they would teach their 8 bars to the rest of the class, so that within the class, they could get a whole variation put together, and they felt that they learned something. And that was a successful way of approaching it. And later we did rather simple dictations,
Yeah. Yeah.
and sometimes using combinations they had read before,
Right.
because then they would have something they could identify,
Right.
and it worked well.
May, you had something you want to say?
For English speakers, I have a question. So, in terms of English speakers, you read, but do you copy like the whole entire sentence? No, you don't.
That's something, I guess, that's particular to
Chinese, because the Chinese, the
Copy.
calligraphies, the stroke are so particular, so we actually copy the entire articles or whatever short, and then you get familiar with it. So actually, in a way, when I was helping Lucy to put Eco's technical paper, I was copying, whatever was written on the, the hand drawing symbols on the Laban writer. And then that period, actually, my knowledge of Laban notation improved tremendously.
Oh, sure, and I know Mira, I'm sorry she isn't here. Mira, working on transcription for years, she got to see how people did this and how people did that, and, by copying it. And then she became, she developed her own ideas after that, but
Yeah, using the if you want to use as a model teaching reading, I can't remember, but it seems to me that when you're teaching reading to a child, the teacher stands and they might write the word. Today we're going to learn, we're going to read a story about dogs, read the story about dogs together, and then we say, oh, let's think about the word dog. I'm gonna write the word dog. Now you write the word dog. So it's teacher do, students copy. And we could do that in you know what I mean?
Right.
So what am I gonna do? I'm gonna draw a line and I'm gonna say step, 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 step. Now you do it. I mean, it sounds inane, you know, I'm an adult, I'm an advanced, you know, we've got a Jill Silicera, who's this brilliant genius, but so what, you
You
know,
have to start somewhere.
and then, so the teacher does it, and then maybe what would be the next step?
Well, see, the other thing is,
You know?
when they teach children these days, there are two methods and many times they're intertwined. One is phonics and one is whole language. And what we were doing when we taught New York Theater Ballet all to read was we were using whole language. Whole language takes